reconcile the grand forces of capitalism, the supermarkets, so to say, the grand supermarkets, not the local shopkeepers, with the rejuvenation of civil society? Or is there a tension there that's unresolved?
Thanks, Tom. That's a great question. I think that the answer is that you should read not only The Wealth of Nations, but the Theory of Moral Sentiments, that Smith always conceived of his work on the market as being part of a wider project to understand all the human institutions. He never finished the project, but at least the work on civil society is there, with its emphasis on empathy as the basis for human interactions outside the market. I'm a Smith devotee, and I think that's the right approach. Smith always understood the market as being embedded institutionally. It's not possible, as it were, to float without institutional, political and civil society support. So the challenge we face is how to simultaneously have dynamic markets that are innovative, that allocate capital optimally, that allow price discovery and competition. All of these things are valuable for the reasons that Smith gave, and at the same time have a vibrant civil society. And I think the answer to the question requires help from thinkers other than Smith. In the book, I mean, I should make this clear, I act as a burglar of other people's ideas because I'm just a historian, I'm not a great economic or political thinker. So I call on Smith, as I always do, but I also call on Darwin to try to understand the evolutionary forces at work in economic as well as natural life. And I bring in Walter Badgett, to think about regulation, very illuminating, to go back to his view of how financial markets should be regulated. And I talk about the rule of law in Charles Dickens's terms in the third chapter. But you know, the clincher in the whole argument is actually Tocqueville. Let me say a few words about my debt to Alexis de Tocqueville. Tocqueville understood the problem about the state better than almost anybody. He saw in Democracy in America that civil society would suffer if the state became too powerful. There's this terrific passage that you may know at the end of Book 2 where he describes the state in a dystopian future, all-powerful, but not coercive, gentle, nurturing, taking care of one's every need, and thereby killing enterprise and killing initiative and reducing citizens to the status of sheep. This passage, when I reread it, I think I first read it as an undergraduate, when I reread it last year, it made me sit up with my spine tingling, because there was a vision, a truly prophetic vision of the future. And we have reached that future. We thought we were doing the right thing by creating this powerful state, and we thought that having security from the cradle to the grave would be a good idea, but actually it's not. It's a bad idea. And the bigger the state has become, the weaker civil society in every case, in every country. It's almost a perfect inverse relationship. So we can't really expect to have what my Prime Minister calls a big society, meaning civil society, if we have a big state. They're mutually exclusive. So I don't know what one does about that, except to try to hammer home the message that out of the good intentions that produced the welfare state came a whole series of unintended consequences. The unreformed welfare state creates a dependent class. It can account for anything up to a fifth of the population. It condemns them to dependency. It condemns them to bad education. It condemns them to inherited poverty. That's the unintended consequence of the system. So we have in the United States to resist the pressure to create such a state, which is very strong at the moment, and politically highly incentivized, because the more people you make dependent on the state, the more votes you get. It's irresistible. That's how the Democratic Party works. It's called the machine. It's run out of Chicago. It's really hard to stop. And in many European countries, let me talk a little bit about my own, it's too late. I come from Scotland. Scotland's a lot like Norway. except for one small problem: union with England. And that problem, which has been as much a benefit as a cost for most of Scottish history, became a really chronic problem from around the 1970s. Because Scotland defined itself in opposition to Thatcher, and by definition, therefore, defined itself as the land of welfare. When Mitt Romney made his legendary remark about the 47% of Americans who received some or other form of benefit, he didn't know quite how close to the mark he was. Because in Scotland, the equivalent percentage is 84%. The significance of the percentage is that it's non-stable. Once it's got to 47%, it's not long before it gets to 84%. That's the problem. That dynamic is extremely hard to resist because it's so politically effective. That's a long answer to a short question, but that's the best I can do.